All right, now I'm going to just kind of go over, give you a little rundown of the truck, what it is front to back. We'll start with everything outside, and then I'm gonna get up in there and we'll kind of go over everything underneath the truck, give you an idea of what we're working with. There's nothing top secret on this thing. It's really nothing too fancy. It's just a lot of effort and a lot of work to get something that shouldn't do what it does necessarily, to do something decent, to get down the track. Starting up front, what we got, cheap Summit Racing intercooler. Robert's been yelling at me all year because it's only like a 3.5-inch core deal. It's not super efficient, obviously, but it has got the job done. I mean, the truck, we normally will race on 30 to 35 pounds, and it works all right in that range. Intake air temps normally never get above 150, 160 at the most, and being on E, we don't even pull timing to that point. But this thing definitely, there's no doubt it's become a handicap. Inside then, basics, we used to, the radiator was up front. We had same radiator we have now out back, but it used to be up front. Have a nice Mazir water pump, works very good. Joe at Hoosier Pulleys got us dialed in on a couple of an alternator pulley and then kind of a custom idler to get it to work. This whole I didn't want to ditch, we already had a good alternator and everything already worked, so I didn't want to ditch all that stuff when we went to electric pump. So I have I think it's an ICT billet lower down there, that pulley setup for the tensioner, manual tensioner, and then using that custom pulley there that Joe made me for like an idler, we're able to get the belt routing to work, and it never throws a belt ever. We had a little bit of a problem early in the year too, throwing belts. No problems at all now. Went to 2 catch cans recently because we had an issue, and I think a lot of guys will see this. We're not ideal over here. This rear line means you're going to naturally get some oil in there. It's not baffled there. We got a small hole drilled, right? So 2 catch cans definitely helped it breathe also, and we didn't get nearly as much oil out of it. We started off the year with standard coils, just truck coils. We went to smart coils later in the year because why not when you can. There's no doubt that they can handle a bunch more dwell with no problems, which the move was either go to a better fuel at some point, and so those are going to come in handy. Manifold wise on this deal are just they're stock truck manifolds, nothing fancy. I now have them, they're coated, even though the coating's like it must rust through a little bit. I coated them all and got rid of the stupid header wrap because of the fire stuff, and it's not fun. Driver's side, again, stock truck manifold. We had to cut quite a bit off at the bottom of it and V-band it to get it by. I can kind of show you when we get up in the air to get it by the frame rail. We had a stock steering shaft on it most all year. I upgraded this to this little shaft from Hooker. It's a drop-in. It's like $150 maybe, and it gets rid of the rag joint. A lot of guys have issues with the rag joints. Luckily, we never got to the point where it broke, but it was looking pretty ratty, and I thought I'll change it before this thing attempts to kill me again. Stock throttle body, as we talked about earlier, nothing fancy there. We started out the year with the VS Racing 210s that were in the truck. Went on the show. I had some Holly 160s that I ran then for most of the rest of the year until about the last third of the year. I put my FID 2200 210s in it out of the Camaro again to try to get a little bit more, be easier on the fuel pumps, and kind of worked a little better. Brake wise, little single wheel wood master cylinder, what they gave us on the show, it's still holding real tight. All right, let's go into the inside of this beast. It's no frills, it's nothing fancy. We don't got things like door panels. The damn window clips have only broken as much as the motors have broke this week, or this year, I'm sorry. We never threw a dash back in it just because it's actually kind of roomy in these trucks without a dash. Like, if you don't throw that in there, seems like it's a lot bigger in this cab. I don't need a lot of extra room, but it doesn't hurt. We had to throw some speakers in it for Rocky Mountain Race Week. Had to have a radio, of course. You're driving around. We stuck with the stock wheel a lot because these little buttons I got off Amazon for like $7. They fit in there perfect. Like, the feel of this thing's awesome. And we basically just obviously took the steering wheel and just ran it upside down. And everybody's like, why don't you put a lightweight column in it and this and that? And it's like, this really works well. I mean, it fits, it feels good, it fits good. It's cheap, obviously it's on it. Turn signal still works, so all that stuff does for the street stuff. The little dash, she works real good on there. One of the best things we did this year, interior wise, also was put the dang air shifter on it from Precision. Ryan Saki helped us out on that deal, sold us one, got us a good deal in, got it in. Years ago, I would have made fun of guys with air shifters, told you to shift your own car. I'm telling you what, this will change your life on a backtrack. You got enough going on trying to handle the rig and, you know, slipping and sliding around. It's awesome to have an air shifter. You don't miss shifts, and everything it's just money. Get an air shifter if you don't have one. Also added a little cell phone mount there. It came in good for Rocky Mountain Race Week. Also goes good for holding your draggies. A little Tech Tip Tuesday on that deal. Nothing fancy up there. We just have our little Ron Francis switch panel kit. Nothing major. That was what they gave us on the show too. All right, out to some business end. Again, we got the Force Performance 9199 on her. Thing works real good. And, you know, after all this year of racing, driving on the street, 1,200 miles on Rocky Mountain and all this, you know, I don't know if we can see, she still looks pretty damn good in there, right? No real play, nothing front and back, a little bit side to side. That does remind me of one more explosion we had. we had a turbo on. We tried an 8499 for a while that Eric Englert had on his car, on his 3000 GT, and I think it only lasted about 4 passes, and it shit canned the wheel out of that, which was very interesting on there. But it had been used and abused for years, and we just finished it off with the truck. Tile, this is what you got to do on your wastegates. You got to have a good wastegate. We had a junky VS on there at first and at the show, and that's part of what about cost us, honestly, the win in the show. We couldn't make boost in the dyno because of that garbage. Spend a little money on one thing for sure: wastegates, buy tile. So one thing we did this year that was kind of we were looking for ways, I think after, it would have been probably after dig or die roughly, we're trying to figure out how do we get some more bias back here, how do we get some weight back here, and we're like, we know we want to move the radiator back, and tested some stuff out and finally made the decision that let's throw it back here. Bought a real nice fan setup from Dural. It worked out good. We already had a bottom kind of a bracket there. You can't really see it, but we had an L-shaped piece of angle iron already on the bottom from when we had the big CO2 tank on the show. So mounting this thing really wasn't too bad. I think Moo did. We kind of put up there. Moo welded some bosses in for me and made up these angle iron pieces, and we got it bolted to it. So it really wasn't a bad install. And, you know, we struggled some on Rocky Mountain with it. I still think some of it's this radiator. I mean, it's never easy when you got it back here. And if we went slow, it wasn't a problem. But as soon as we got going fast at higher speeds, this thing would get hot for sure. So that's why we added the second Davies Craig pump over there, and it really didn't do anything. So I'm actually going to take that thing back off. Tranny cooler wise, we just got a real decent little Dural tranny cooler. It's like a 16 pass. We got a flap cut underneath the bed, let air in. It looks kind of like this deal here where we cut a flap in the bed so that we can just try to get some air to come up there to it. You know, for the longest time, we had the concrete block back here, which is sitting over there somewhere hiding, but it's 350 pounds. We had to have that to meet weight for horsepower wars, and it worked great in the truck. It was 350 pounds. It was way back here. It did good, but then, you know, as we started to figure out, and we got some help, and Bill Hodgkinson actually gave us an idea and says what they did on their truck. You know, you're trying to move weight higher and far back, right? So, you know, he kind of suggested, hey, if you put the weight up there, you can use less weight, right? We use less weight up higher, get the same kind of leverage. So went and got these plates cut, and they bolt up really easy right to that basically where the rubber bracket is, the rubber bumper is for the tailgate. Bolts right through there, and that's like 180 pounds ish, I think, total. And decided to take the concrete block out only because with the tank, you know, I still have my fuel tanks actually there. We use this to add bias, and it's 20 gallons, so, you know, it's roughly what, 160 plus pounds that we can change on the fly. So that if we were doing any other type of like a front end no prep, you know, where you don't need nearly the bias we have in this thing right now, we can let the water out of it really easy, and now all of a sudden we can change our bias number without having to really undo anything. And so that was kind of the thought. We already had the tank. We had it in for Rocky Mountain Race Week. That's actually what we drove on. We raced on that little guy with the 85, and then drove on that with pump gas most time, and or E85 also. So yeah, it worked out pretty good for that whole setup. So of course, mandatory trailer hitch, so that you could do all the Rocky Mountain Race Week stuff with no issues. So that's kind of that's our overview of the outside of the truck for all you that haven't been that close to it, or kind of was curious on some things we had done on the outside or how things were put together. And if you got more questions, just hit up in the comments or whatnot. So I'm gonna put this thing on the rack, and then we're gonna look at the underside of it and see what she looks like. Fix the little hat there. Okay. Every time, no matter what, there's always one person that walks by and is like, "Hey, your license plate's bent." And it's like, it's bent on purpose. It's supposed to be bent. And we even had one guy tell us that we have to take it off because if it falls off, it's gonna hit somebody. Pfft, gone. Leaving it like it is. It's about time for a new one though. This one's getting a little bit torn up. All right, so let's see what we got here for some travel. My assistant, Layla Marie, is gonna hold this for me. Hold that. We're gonna measure how much travel we got up front. So right now, we're at 28 1/4. Let's see what happens when we get the full travel. All right, so touching the ground, 35 and we can call it 1/4. So what does that math out to? That's all. Let's see if that's all we got. Yep, that's all we got. Yeah, 35 and a 35 1/4. So it was what, 28 1/4 to 35 1/4. I think that's like 2 and 7. That's like 8 inches, 7 inches, 7, 8 inches right there. Push it all back down. That ride position to full extended, we have 7 inches. So normally we had it at one point sitting down the tire, almost probably what, 2 inches there. Yeah, actually, yeah, 3 inches right there. So if you had it sitting down on the tire to full extension, 10 inches of travel, that's a bunch. And check in and go all the way up. She barely fits. All right. So let's go look at the underside of the gap train and kind of get an idea of how not fancy it is compared to what some full race cars are. So starting out, we'll go up front. Let's look at our, again, we'll get a look at that long travel. Custom built. Then TRZ uppers and lowers. Pro forged ball joints, extended. Bump steer kit, nothing fancy there. Still got the old power steering, the power steering box. We got a manual one Thomas Hahn gave us, him and his dad. We just haven't put it on yet. We definitely need to do that, drop a little bit more weight. Kind of see how we got the lines ran for the water pump. Kind of got them sneaking through the frame right there. And that kind of helped keep it all away from everything, the heat and whatnot. There, if you sneak up in there, you can see from one of the explosions. Had to do a little fixing up there. So crossover and exhaust wise, you can see the factory truck manifold come right down there. Sneaks in there, got just a little bit of room. It's a little from the fire damage. Other one, Nick and them did a great job out there, him and Wes, and making everybody building this hot side when we were out there. It's all stainless steel, V-banded. Oh, that was the other thing that broke. When this thing broke, when the drive shaft broke, blammo. Cut this off. Derek had to paste this in on the other part. Cut that off. And that's what partially then beat in all this stuff, beat in the bed. But the other thing that happened when it flew around, it actually came over here. We had an A1000 up here. It knocked the end off, which I have the A1000 right here. Knocked the end right off the A1000, and having a 2-gallon fuel cell at that point was a good thing because it's all it had to empty, but it emptied the fuel cell at the same time. So, you know, now we got that Fort Wayne clutch hitter in it. She's good to go. Well, back up front, got my fancy, we just got, you know, just a basic Turbo 400, good aftermarket case, dump valve kits, internal, external. The internal one from RPM is actually in the pan on the Turbo 400, which is kind of nice. Because, you know, some people act like S10's got all kinds of room, like you would think it's a truck, and it does. But it's really pretty narrow in between the frame rails. There's not a lot of room. Like, you get up here with the engine, it's pretty tight. My Camaro with the tubular front subframe, you know, I'll go over there. I got room for days. This thing, you know, we barely got room. We had to notch that. We were in there out in Cali. There's just not a lot of room. Where if we come over here, look underneath the old corporate with the tubular deal. I mean, I could do a freaking, we could do rod change with the motor in the car. There's tons of room. So, you know, when we first got the S10, I think the first time we brought it back and had to do something to change converter or whatnot, getting that transmission out the first time sucked because, like, you can see one bolt there. The rest of them, you can't see them, and they're really kind of tough to get to. We had to do a little manipulation on the floorboard, and I drilled one hole through for that top one to help make it get done quicker. But, you know, that was, after that, and we kind of learned the tricks. There's all kind, you know, you can make it happen, but these things are really tight. So for the turbo drain, a lot of guys ask, you know, why is the turbo like it is? Part of the reason that it's up so high was, one, it looks cool. Two, it got all the air we could get to that 80. And three was we didn't have to buy a scavenge pump. So it literally just flows right down from the turbo, down the intake tube, next to the tunnel. And then I got a bulkhead. We didn't have a fancy bulkhead then, but when I got back, it's one of those things I didn't want it to end up killing me. So I put a bulkhead in the floor. The drain line comes down through there, and boom, drains right into the pan. Easy peasy, and works really good. So yeah, continuing back, got a set of 12 1800 twin, two of the twin Holley pumps there. Each got their own pre-filters, and then I have one of the big post filters, so I only had to run one of those. Line goes up to the back, and then goes to the back of the rail and splits out to 2 8s. Same thing on the hot side again. So when this got broken right here, it caused us to have to like redo some of this. When we did, I think we were either running out of time or something, and we went with the slip, like a double slip fit here. The double slip fit deal is really awesome until you got something that decides it wants to pop and bang every time you get on the chip. You know, we get that little bam shotgun blast, and there's a slip joint down at the bottom. So if I don't go in there and use my little persuader,
you just need to wedge this.
That's actually not a bad point. Then it likes to blow it out of there. So that's what that fancy $3 exhaust clamp from AutoZone is. That's going to hold it together because, yeah, there's where it got dented when it got pushed out from the wreck. You know, we got to keep that thing on there. Every time it bangs now, it'd freaking kick it out. So, yeah, we've got a clamp on there, took care of that. Let's see, continue out back. Got the basic, you know, nothing fancy, 8.8. I think it was out of a Mustang. We were out there, obviously they narrowed it up. Basically moved the wheels. We got this thing as narrow as you can get it, as you can see, to where this is as narrow as you can get it with this wheel and tire, the way it is to get it to fit in here. So we're trying to do all we could without narrowing the frame rail, and that was about all that could be done. All right, so we talked about how when we were out there, we narrowed that rear end as much as we can get it with this tire on it, that wheel, where the stock frame would still allow. We got as tight as we could. So when you do that in an S10, if you don't if you don't change the bed side at all, what you end up with is the wheel sticks out like this much, which we don't really, I don't like. I want that thing freaking tucked in there. So one thing that some people see it, some people don't, or realize that it's done, and they may like think something looks weird, but they don't really know what it is. And our buddy Muff, he showed us this trick on his S10, and actually when we were out there, I called him to find out what he did because we were trying to do the same thing. But these bed sides are actually, they are actually flared out. You see that? So stock, they would have went nice and smooth and flat, would have been on that line there. But what we did to be able to tuck that tire is you cut that inner lip right there and then stretch it. Matt and Mick out, when we're out in California, man, you just pull this thing out, stretch it out, extend the 2 supports down there, and then at that point it'll stay out just as good as new, stretched out. Your tires and wheels tuck in, and you ain't got your lip hanging out no more. So good to go. You know, this little bit hanging here, got a little bit of weight, about 100 pounds. Again, we needed that weight to even meet the minimum weight for the show, and it's just worked out good ever since. You know, other than that, it's kind of your basic leaf spring anything deal, right? So split monos, Caltrack bars, got to have your gap brackets, right? Bam. There's how we got them set up. Sliders out back. It's a big deal getting that chassis to work. Then we got, of course, QA1. They were part of the show. Was they sponsored these shocks for Horsepower Wars, and we've had them on the Camaro for years. Anybody that's used them understands how nice they are. Those little pods there swap out in, you know, minutes, literally. Just take those screws out, pod pops out, you can change and basically revalve your whole shock, compression or extension side in just a few minutes. So it's really a nice deal. For guys that look at the gap brackets and wonder how they mount, get questions on that all the time. If you don't have one, you can see it just goes on the leaf spring perch like normal, like a regular one does. Then we have some holes for more adjustment. On an S10, I believe with the stock upper mounts, you could even get away with them, but most guys do what we did here. Just run a crossbar, mount them vertical. It really works. It's really the best way anyhow, right? So that's kind of the thing to do if you can. Little anti-roll bar there, basic Moser cover. Yeah, that's kind of what the under the skin looks like of this thing.